Have you ever wondered just how fast a racing car can get when the best engineers in the world are not restrained by an endless list of regulations? Well, in 2018, Porsche gave us the answer. They took their Le Mans winning 919 Hybrid and gave their team a single, straightforward rule: make F1 cars look slow. What came out would make its mark in history. A car so fast, it would make records fall at its wheels, and so precise that drivers would question the laws of physics. It's not often that we see somebody successfully master the rules and then systematically dismantle them to create magic. But when we do, it probably looks something like this: the Porsche 919 Hybrid EVO, a perfect machine that may as well be crafted from the charred remains of an FIA rulebook. In the 6 years since its introduction, the 919 Hybrid EVO has achieved some truly astonishing things. The root of this can be traced back to Porsche's successes at the World Endurance Championship, especially on the most coveted track of them all, the Circuit de la Sarthe, or as it's more popularly known, the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Since Porsche's first race at the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 1951, it's grown to become the undisputed king of the track. In half a century, it's amassed an impressive 108 class wins and a record-breaking 19 overall victories. Today, it's the most successful team in history on what is considered the most grueling track ever, beating out stiff competition from the likes of Audi, Ferrari, and Jaguar. This can't be a fluke. Behind every success is an incredible car, and behind every car is a brilliant crew. Think back to the Porsche 917 Pink Pig, the 911 GT1, and the 956 and 962 Duo, which went on a rampage through the 80s. These are no cars to scoff at. Instead, they're proof of how Porsche's team of genius engineers has consistently found new ways to push the regulations to the limit and produce a lineup of great cars. But we don't need to go that far back to understand the genius of the EVO. Today's story only begins about a decade ago, when Porsche unleashed this beast, the 919 Hybrid. In 2014, Porsche returned to top-tier racing for the first time in over a decade since it last won with its 911 GT1. Along with the announcement, we were introduced to the first version of the 919 Hybrid, which made its first appearance at the Geneva Motor Show that year. At the time, the WEC regulations mandated that all manufacturers create an innovative hybrid drive, and it was already clear by the Geneva show that the 919 Hybrid was not only up to the mark, but was also a force to be reckoned with. The car was fitted with a 4-cylinder gasoline engine and 2 energy recovery systems. Its turbocharged 2-liter V4 produced 500 brake horsepower, which the hybrid energy system boosted to well over 900 brake horsepower in race spec. The engine powered the prototype's rear wheels, while an electric motor generator provided drive to the front axle, giving it a 4-wheel drive system reminiscent of the Porsche's road-going 918 Spider. But this wasn't just a rebrand of previous technology. There were some special touches as well. The 919 Hybrid, for instance, was the only car of all LMP1 manufacturers to recover energy from the exhaust system as well as kinetic energy from braking. Somehow, even with all these advanced systems, the car was still exceptionally light. It only weighed 875 kilograms, both to comply with the WEC regulations and courtesy of some great design choices. The chassis and body were made with carbon fiber and aluminum, giving it the perfect blend of strength and rigidity. The car's aerodynamics were a result of over 2,000 hours of wind tunnel testing over the previous 2 years. The car was also unique in terms of energy storage. The regulations gave manufacturers a lot of freedom to choose an energy storage medium. While Audi used the flywheel and Toyota used ultracaps, Porsche opted for lithium-ion batteries. It's these little tricks, unique designs, and out-of-the-box thinking like this that make Porsche such an interesting manufacturer to watch every time there's a regulation change. And indeed, when the 2014 season began, several eyes were peeled on the 919 Hybrid and Porsche's big return to this level of motorsport. The manufacturer fielded 2 LMP1 cars that year, along with an impressive driver lineup that included names like Neil Yanni, Romain Dumas, Brendan Hartley, and a Formula One legend, Mark Webber. The 919 Hybrid's first outing was at the 6 Hours of Silverstone, a race that it would finish in a respectable third, behind the 2 Toyota TS040 hybrids. But Le Mans is a different beast to contend with, and one that the manufacturer hadn't conquered with an LMP1 car since it last fielded the 911 GT1 in 1998. Unfortunately, that year, the 919 failed to grab headlines. At the Sardt circuit, its best car finished down at 11th, 31 laps short of the winning Audi R18 e-tron Quattro. Then, in the following race at Spa-Francorchamps, a 919 Hybrid qualified first but was only able to finish fourth, this time behind both an Audi and the two Toyotas. However, despite these lukewarm performances, the year would end on a high for Team Porsche. Dumas, Yanni, and Lieb were rewarded for their 3 pole positions over the season with an elusive win at Interlagos. Combined with some consistent performances in the second car, driven by Timo Bernhard, Hartley, and Webber, these successes would be enough to ensure that Porsche would finish 3rd overall in the championship. The following year saw many variations and upgrades to the 919 Hybrid. The car got a new chassis, along with further weight reduction measures. It also received a significant design change with a new nose job that gave it a more formidable appearance. So, 2015 was the first year we'd truly see the 919 Hybrid in action. The first 2 races at Silverstone and Spa may have been won by Audi, but Porsche proved it wasn't a team to mess with, as one of its cars won all 6 of the remaining rounds, and the trio of Webber, Bernhard, and Hartley won a cool 4 races in a row. In fact, during only the 3rd round of the season, at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, Porsche achieved something special, winning at Sardt for the 17th time after a 17-year gap, with drivers Earl Bamber, Nick Tandy, and Nico Hülkenberg. That year, Porsche returned to winning ways at the WEC2, earning both the drivers' and manufacturers' titles. Impressive, but still barely scratching the surface of the 919's excellent run. The next 2 years saw Team Porsche tinker with its designs a lot more, even as the FIA continued to lay down the law. In 2016, the regulations reduced the fuel flow for all prototypes, and Porsche responded by redesigning its engine to be lighter and produce around 480 horsepower. The rest of the power was made up by optimizing the electric motor. Thanks to some ingenious modifications, the car was, as driver Romain Dumas put it, nearly as quick as in 2015. The result? Another smashing Le Mans victory that saw Dumas, Yanni, and Lieb steer past a faltering Toyota in the dying stages of the event. By the end of that year, Porsche won its 2nd drivers' and manufacturers' titles in a row. In 2017, Porsche retained the 919's monocoque, but practically nothing else. In fact, some estimates suggest that the engineers changed up to 70% of the car. Most of these modifications were made to the aerodynamics, chassis, and engine, which Porsche said made it the most efficient car yet. By this point, about 60% of the recovered energy came from a kinetic energy recovery system, or KERS, which charged the lithium-ion batteries under braking, while the remaining 40% came from the exhaust recovery system. This made the 919 the only prototype to recover energy during both braking and accelerating. The result? Yeah, it's almost too predictable at this point. Porsche stormed to the top of the Le Mans podium for a 3rd consecutive year. But this time it wouldn't be as straightforward. The 2017 Le Mans turned out to be one of the most nail-biting races of the season, and possibly one of Porsche's most dramatic victories ever. Things were going great for the team until the 21st hour, when Porsche's number 1 car suffered a loss of oil pressure, which ended its race. The second Porsche, which had spent almost an hour in the pits earlier for an MGU change, was languishing at the back of the pack. Fortunately for Porsche, Toyota Gazoo Racing had a much worse time. All 3 TS050's LMP1 prototypes, including one piloted by a flying Kamui Kobayashi, had to bow out of contention one after another with various reliability issues. Left with only LMP2 cars to compete with, the trio of Bamber, Hartley, and Bernhard pulled off a flawless performance over the next few hours, gaining on the frontrunners by 10 to 15 seconds every lap. Eventually, in the final hour of the race, Porsche's number 2 car had made up a staggering 56 positions to take the lead and the victory. By the end of 2017, the 919 Hybrid had achieved 3 overall victories in a row, with all drivers and manufacturers' titles. So it came as a surprise when 2018 rolled around and Porsche decided to call it quits on the WEC. After 3 years of mastering the regulations and unlocking new levels of speed and endurance, Porsche decided to set its sights on a more responsible target, Formula E. In retrospect, this move made complete sense, considering Porsche was already working on an ambitious Mission E plan to create a sports car that runs over 300 miles without a drop of gasoline. Formula E would be the perfect place for the manufacturer to make strides in the areas of sustainability, environmental friendliness, and efficiency. But what about the 919 Hybrid? Oh, with that, they'd go completely bonkers. There's a quote often attributed to Pablo Picasso that goes like this: "Learn the rules like a pro so you can break them like an artist." At no point has this saying been more relevant than for Porsche in 2018. The team had clearly spent several years doing a pretty good job of operating within the confines of the rules to bring consecutive victories at Le Mans in the WEC. Now, as a gift to the team for its exceptional performance, it was time to go ham and throw the FIA rulebook straight into the trash. In a move that would make the most committed punk proud, Porsche gave its team free rein to rebuild the 919 Hybrid with 0 rules. For an engineer, this is a dream come true. Imagine spending 20 years learning how to skydive, getting onto a plane, and then being told you can't jump off. That's probably how a team full of motorheads feels every time they're burdened by a long list of regulations telling them to tune down engines and reduce speeds. So in Porsche's case, shipping the 919 Hybrid off to a museum when it was done with its WEC run wasn't an option. The team wanted to show the world what this car was capable of, given the right circumstances. Porsche wanted to break records, make headlines, and send the 919 off into the sunset with a bang. So, back in the garage, the orders were clear. Do whatever it takes, but make this thing go faster. To create this no-holds-barred machine, the team wouldn't have to start from scratch. In fact, by the time Porsche announced it was leaving the WEC at the end of 2017, it had already engineered half of 2018's prototype. The team soon realized there was no point in throwing away everything they had worked on up until that point. So, mechanically, much of the LMP1 spec car would be retained. But, as engineers would soon find out, simply relaxing some of the regulations that the FIA placed on the vehicle was enough to create something the world hadn't seen before. A monster that would shatter records on some of motorsport's most iconic tracks. The first move was to give the car a major horsepower boost. Since Porsche was no longer limited by fuel flow restrictions, the car was allowed to burn 1.03 gallons or 3.8 liters per lap, compared to the 0.65 or 2.4 liters it was permitted under the regulations. Accordingly, the V4 engine now produced up to 720 horsepower, compared to the 500 before. The electric motor also got a significant 10% boost, putting out 440 horsepower. Combined, the 919 Hybrid produced a baffling 1,160 horsepower, enough to make it gallop down a track, as we'll soon see. Components of the car were also tweaked so that the EVO would recuperate roughly 30% more energy than the Hybrid did during its WEC run. This would improve the car's speed on the straights and allow for more forceful braking. Meanwhile, modifications to the aerodynamics package resulted in a staggering 53% more downforce than what the 919 Hybrid had during the previous year's Spa qualifying session. A huge part of this boost came courtesy of the car's brand new and pretty massive rear wing, which also generated less drag on the straights. This, Porsche claimed, gave the 919 Hybrid EVO more downforce than the average Formula 1 car. Then there was the weight problem. No longer bound by strict regulations that dictated how heavy their car had to be and unburdened by any sort of safety requirements, Porsche decided the 919 Hybrid needed to go on a diet. Pronto. The team took apart the car piece by piece to remove any unnecessary components. The air conditioning system, windscreen wiper, extra sensors, and headlights were discarded, reducing the EVO's weight by another 39 kilograms, resulting in a total weight of just 849 kilograms. Besides that, a four-wheel brake-by-wire system was installed, along with a modified power steering and stronger suspension wishbones. Even tire provider Michelin had a bit of fun, developing new compounds to offer more grip without compromising on safety. In 2018, following what would have possibly been the equivalent of Coachella for engineers, the Hybrid EVO was complete. It emerged from the shadows like a Frankenstein's monster doused in fuel, reeking of burnt rubber, and ready to show the world what happens when every rule is ignored. It went just about how you would expect. Since the car couldn't possibly be allowed to race in any series, the goal was clear: make old records fall like dominoes. The responsibility of pushing the new 919 to its limit was given to decorated driver Neil Yanni. With both Hero and Chariot ready, all that was left to do was to put the EVO on the track. Considering that most of the car had remained the same, only minus WEC restrictions, you'd probably imagine that the EVO would gain a few tenths, or maybe even a second per lap compared to the 919 Hybrid. Well, not exactly. As it turns out, there's a lot more to be gained from not following the rules. On April 9, 2018, the car made its way to the 4.35-mile or 7-kilometer long Spa-Francorchamps, ready to pull off something special. The track is a favorite among drivers and fans for how long and fast it is, and was the perfect setting to test Porsche's mind-bending creation. The previous year, when Porsche had put the 919 Hybrid on pole, it had an average lap time of 1 minute, 54 seconds, and 97 milliseconds. But in April 2018, that time may as well have been set by a tractor for all Porsche cared, as Yanni managed to pull off an insane 1 minute, 41 seconds, and 77 milliseconds, more than 12 seconds faster than the Hybrid's fastest lap of the previous year. Let that sink in for a second. This is a sport that's measured in milliseconds, where engineers work for months on upgrades to shave off mere tenths, if not thousandths of a second. 12 whole seconds is a lifetime in motorsport. During this record run, Yanni achieved a top speed of 223 miles per hour, or 359 kilometers per hour, and had an average speed of 152.6 miles per hour, or 245.61 kilometers per hour. What's more impressive is that Yanni later claimed that the EVO had a minimum corner speed of 191 miles per hour, or 307 kilometers per hour through Eau Rouge, one of the most thrilling corners on the track, and honestly one of the main reasons why Spa is considered so special. As soon as Team Porsche first began making its modifications, they probably realized that this car would be faster than any LMP1 prototypes released up until that point. But what they probably didn't realize is that the car would actually also be faster than any Formula 1 car to have raced down Spa-Francorchamps too. You see, this 1 minute, 41 seconds, and 77 milliseconds wasn't just a solid accomplishment in comparison to Porsche's 919 Hybrid. It was a time that would break the all-time Spa record, which was held at the time by Formula 1 champion Lewis Hamilton. That's right, it went 0.783 seconds faster than the world's fastest Formula 1 car. If that doesn't seem so impressive, consider this. The last time Porsche raced in Formula 1 was 1964. But the last time they beat out a Formula 1 car was in 2018, on this record-busting run. And this wasn't just any other F1 car either. It was a dominant Mercedes W11, often considered one of the greatest race cars of all time, and one that allowed a certain Mr. Hamilton to add the title of Sir to his name. Later, it was shockingly estimated that the car hadn't even reached its limit. For instance, the run was made on a warm day, prompting some engineers to wonder what it could have done if the mercury had dipped slightly. Whichever way you look at it, this was an insane accomplishment, not just for a limitless Le Mans prototype, but even for a Formula 1 car. When Yanni was asked what he thought about the car, the Swiss driver was quivering in excitement. He started out by saying it was the fastest car he had ever driven, which is obvious, but he also said that the level of grip it offered was also unimaginable, and in a fully new dimension. The speed at which everything happened was so overwhelming that Yanni said he had to significantly alter his reaction times to keep the car on track. Stephen Meadis, the head of the project, said the project was an engineer's dream come true. But he also left us with something else to think about when he declared that even the EVO hadn't even fully exploited the 919 Hybrid's technical potential, since the team was limited not by regulations but resources. Either way, the Hybrid EVO set its sights on the next target. In June 2018, the Hybrid EVO, helmed by Timo Bernhard, made its way to the Nürburgring Nordschleife, the world's longest racetrack and one of its most demanding. The previous record at the Nürburgring was set in 1983 by another Porsche, the 956C, piloted by Stefan Bellof. Back then, Bellof covered the 12.9-mile or 20.8-kilometer track in roughly 6 minutes and 11 seconds, which was seriously impressive considering the car had to comply with regulations, had no four-wheel drive, no traction control, and the track was longer. Still, the EVO, which was made to break records and nothing else, made Bellof's record look like it had been set by a school bus. as Bernhard stormed around the track in 5 minutes, 19 seconds, and 55 milliseconds, almost a minute faster than Beloff's immaculate run 35 years prior. Later, Bernhard attributed the record-breaking run to downforce levels he had never seen before. It was the car's unique aerodynamics that enabled him to take some of the most precarious sections of the track at full throttle. "I'm pretty familiar with the Nordschleife, but today I got to learn it in a new way," he said.